Welcome back to the RBR Recap, episode 14. I'm Alex Burgos, joined as always by Gabe Rivas. How are you, Gabe?
Doing well, man. Enjoying this beautiful Sunday evening.
Definitely. We're jumping on here a little bit later than usual, per my busy schedule now in the summer, but getting into it. Had a heavy hitting matchup on Saturday afternoon, which is kind of nice here in the States on the East Coast. Kicked off at about, I would say, 4 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Which was awesome. And we saw the return of the Gypsy King after not having fought in his native land for almost 4 years. Tyson Fury returned with a spectacular 6th round knockout in front of a record-breaking 94,000 people at Wembley Stadium against Whyte, who had 2 losses on his ledger. If you caught our precap prior to the fight, talking about this matchup and then, what we thought was going to happen. Gabe, how did you think the fight went? Was it what you expected? And, what's next for the Gypsy King in your eyes?
I think it was what we expected. We knew the dynamic going in was going to be someone shorter, having to cut the distance and face someone taller with a longer reach. We mentioned previously the 7-inch reach advantage for Tyson, the 5-inch height advantage for Tyson Fury as well. The age wasn't really a factor. Whyte turned 34 in April. Fury turns 34 in August. But I think what I want to address first is that this is what happens when you don't face people who are that much taller than you. With Whyte, if you just look at his past 5 or 6 opponents, they're usually at around his height or a little bit shorter. Povetkin was 6'4", Marius Watch 6'7.5". Oscar Rivas was shorter at 6'0". Derek Chisora 6'1.5". Joseph Parker 6'4". Lucas Brown 6'5". Anthony Joshua a few years ago 6'6". So they're usually around 2 or 3 inches taller than Whyte. With Tyson Fury, he was 5 inches taller. You're going to ask yourself, what does that do to you when you consistently facing people who are around your height, and you rarely get to fight someone who's Tyson Fury's height? What happens is that you don't really know what to do in terms of head movement and defense when you're cutting the ring. I think Whyte really had trouble when Tyson Fury would let go of a few shots. He would put his high guard and then his elbow would be up and then he would move his head a little bit. And then sometimes he would kind of go into a cross arm defense with his left hand down and his right hand pairing jabs and right hands. And so I'm not sure he knew what to do when coming forward. And I think that's how Tyson Fury capitalized. He saw him lunging forward. He saw him kind of not knowing what to do with his arms when moving. And so he let go a jab in the 6th round, kind of touched him, saw that when he did that, he would be open for an uppercut and launched the right uppercut to Whyte's chin that knocked him down and out in the 6th round. So you would expect that this dynamic of Whyte having to cut the distance. What I didn't take into consideration or remember is that he hadn't fought people of that height ever before in his career. No one is as tall as Tyson Fury, so it was a lot of trouble cutting the distance, and Fury was able to connect and knock him out.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, who is Tyson Fury's size really with that skill? It's just a dynamic combination. And so Whyte had never faced that. Who has seen that before in this era or in any era? And it's, getting to a larger conversation of how would Tyson Fury fare amongst the other greats. I think he'd hold his own and do pretty well. And, you can make an argument that he's one of the greats already. So there's a few more guys that he can face in his generation, but by all means, he's really etched his name in the history books already. As far as how we saw this fight going, I think we talked about it in the precap. I really thought that he would use his size advantage. And, around round 4, 5, 6, he started weighing on Whyte more and doing what I thought he was going to do. Actually, I recommended betting on the stoppage, the stoppage for Fury. That ended up happening. And I got lucky with the round. I bet on a round 6 stoppage. Wow. And Fury got that. Yeah. So that was, I think, at around a plus 1,000. And a little lucky on that end, but I would have bet anything from around like 6, 7, 8, where I thought he was going to start, to wear Whyte down, and he really did. I thought he used his skill really well. He used feints and was really getting Whyte to buy into more of his, feints and movements as the rounds progressed. I thought Whyte was a little confused coming out in round 1 in the southpaw stance. Didn't really look comfortable throwing punches, looked more robotic, and to his detriment, stuck through that whole southpaw stance the whole first round. Went back to the orthodox in the second round, but it was just very apparent from the beginning that it was Tyson Fury's fight to do as he pleased. And so, he gave the crowd what he wanted, a knockout stoppage, and now, moves forward into a lot of conversation of what's next. Is it actually going to be retirement, which he alluded to, but then 5 minutes later said, Francis Ngannou, come up to the ring. So, right. And I guess they're making the excuse that, hey, well, if he fights him, it's going to be this hybrid, different fight. It's not going to be a boxing fight, but still, that's not you going into retirement. And not only that, you have the winner of Joshua and Usyk, or Usyk and Joshua this time, lingering in the shadows. Whoever wins that fight is going to be available for an undisputed title unification for Tyson Fury, a huge money fight. And I think both of those fights bring different things to the table. You have this huge UK battle. If Anthony Joshua gets his titles back, it's going to be an incredible fight if that happens. And then Usyk too, another dynamic, the Ukrainian coming back, Fury defeating Klitschko at one point years ago, taking the belts from Ukraine. Now Ukraine comes back with the rest of the belt. I mean, there's just so many storylines, right, cool things and dynamics and stuff. And Usyk, tremendous skill, just poses a different threat, a different type of opponent for Fury. I would like to see not just this big puncher that, is he going to be able to hit Tyson Fury and knock him out? We've seen probably the biggest puncher of this era, and Wilder wasn't able to do it. So this is now just maybe a potentially different storyline that we could see. Gabe, what do you think moving forward is next for Fury? Do you think he actually retires, or it'll be too appetizing to let those fights go by the wayside and just hang up the gloves for Tyson Fury?
He did say he's going to be a man of his word, but it's hard to not fight and participate in this sport when there's so much money on the table. You did mention the potential hybrid fight with Francis Ngannou, but there's also a lot of business to take care of at heavyweight before he calls it quits. He did mention that he accomplished a lot in his post-fight interview. I mean, I think he's going to be in the Hall of Fame just with what he's done already, but there's still a lot that he can do. And he's really at the peak of his career to be able to fill Wembley Stadium, 94,000 people. He's at the top of his game in terms of his abilities in the ring. He didn't look slow. He didn't look old. At 34, that's a really good age to be heavyweight champion of the world. We didn't see him slow down at all in this fight. He used his boxing skills and he used his intelligence as well. Timothy Bradley said something really interesting. I can't remember if it was the third, fourth, or fifth round, but he was throwing feints. Whyte came in lunging, and Tyson didn't really counter immediately. But Tim Bradley said he's making a miss, and eventually he's going to make him pay. And eventually he did do that.
Setting traps. Yep.
Absolutely. Setting traps, but also seeing what his opponent does so he can capitalize it. He could have done that by countering with lunges or by seeing what's open. And that's what he did, seeing that the uppercut was open and landing a shot on Whyte to finish him. So with Tyson Fury, there's just so many things to do. He was able to have a nice trilogy, become champion, go back home because he felt he owed it to his fans to do a hometown defense in Wembley Stadium. But like you said, there's a fight with Usyk. There is a fight with Anthony Joshua. Just so many things to do before he calls it quits. And at 34, he's at the top of his game. But if he wants to ride off into the sunset, what better way than to do it in a hometown defense in a stadium with a knockout win? It doesn't get any better than that.
Thank you for listening to the RBR Recap. Make sure to follow us on social media at RBR Recap. And visit RBRRecap.com for the latest episodes.